Right now, underneath some of the most expensive hotel rooms in America, there is the same bay mud that sank a 58-story skyscraper more than 18 inches into the ground. The same mud, the same soil layers, the same geological problem. And the guests checking in tonight at the St. Regis, the Four Seasons, the Marriott Marquis have no idea. The US Geological Survey has a map. It is public. It is free. And on that map, the south of Market District, SoMa, is colored in the darkest red they use. Very high liquefaction susceptibility. That is their language, not ours. SoMa was historically a swampy, muddy shoreline that was drained and filled in during the gold rush era. It suffered liquefaction in the 1906 earthquake. It suffered it again in 1989. And today, it is the city's luxury hotel hub. But let's go back to when this was supposed to be perfect. In 2009, when the Millennium Tower opened its doors at 301 Mission Street, 3 blocks from where you are standing when you check into the St. Regis, it was called the most successful luxury residential launch in the history of the West Coast. Units sold for between $1 million and $12 million. It won the Outstanding Structural Engineering Project of the Year from the San Francisco office of the American Society of Civil Engineers. The engineers signed off. The city approved it. The politicians celebrated it. And even before construction was finished, the building was sinking. This is the story of what is really underneath the luxury hotel district of San Francisco. How the same soil that destroyed the Millennium Tower is classified as an active geological hazard under hotels hosting thousands of guests every single night. Who signed off on it? What the USGS actually says? And what is happening right now that nobody in the hospitality industry wants to discuss? Let's get into it. Subscribe before we continue, because this channel covers stories that get buried after 2 news cycles. What you're about to see about the soil under San Francisco's hotel district is documented in public records. Subscribers got the Millennium Tower update last week. You almost missed it. To understand the risk, you need to understand what bay mud actually is. Bay mud is not regular soil. It is a mixture of clay, silt, and saturated sediment, the kind of material that was sitting at the bottom of San Francisco Bay for thousands of years before the city decided to build on top of it. Here is the key number. Bedrock in downtown San Francisco sits approximately 200 feet below the surface. Between you and that bedrock, there are layers. First, artificial fill, debris, rubble, sometimes material from the rubble of the 1906 earthquake itself. Then soft bay clay, also called old bay clay by geotechnical engineers. This layer is what caused the Millennium Tower to sink. It is highly compressible. Under the weight of a 58-story building, it slowly compresses, like a wet sponge under a heavy book. The book doesn't fall, but it sinks. The Millennium Tower's foundation used 950 concrete friction piles driven to 80 feet. They never reached bedrock. That was a decision, a documented decision. When the old bay clay beneath those piles compressed under the building's weight, the tower sank 18 inches and tilted 29 inches at its northwest corner. Now, here is the proximity question. The USGS rates the ground around the Millennium Tower as having very high liquefaction risk. The same USGS maps, publicly available, updated 2006, show that this classification covers the entire south of Market corridor, including the blocks where the St. Regis San Francisco, the San Francisco Marriott Marquis, the Four Seasons, the InterContinental, and the W San Francisco are built. Same soil type, same map, same color. SoMa was not always land. The south of Market District was a swampy, marshy shoreline that was filled in during the mid to late 1800s to expand the city. That fill was not engineered with modern seismic standards. It was debris, mud dredged from the bay, and rubble from demolished buildings. According to the USGS liquefaction hazard maps, and this is the official government record, the south of Market area was historically a marsh and Mission Bay. Both SoMa and Mission Bay suffered liquefaction in the 1906 earthquake. Both suffered it again in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Keith Knudsen, a research geophysicist with the United States Geological Survey, stated on the public record, soft muds shake much harder than bedrock. During the Loma Prieta earthquake, sensors recorded that soft mud areas shook dramatically harder than surrounding bedrock zones. In the 1989 earthquake, which measured 6.9 on the Richter scale, the Marina district liquefied. The Cypress Freeway structure in Oakland, built on soft bay mud, collapsed and killed 42 people. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake was magnitude 7.9, 50 times more energetic than Loma Prieta. And in the city's own community action plan for seismic safety, released publicly and cited in San Francisco's current earthquake safety implementation program, officials acknowledged that a major earthquake would devastate the city's housing stock. That plan was published years after every major hotel in SoMa was already built. The question is not whether the geology is risky. The USGS answered that question. The question is what was disclosed to the people sleeping in those buildings. Here is the moment that makes this impossible to dismiss. In 2021, when engineers began the $120 million retrofit of the Millennium Tower, drilling new piles down to bedrock 275 feet below, they discovered something unexpected. The vibrations from the drilling were accelerating the very settlement they were trying to stop. The old bay clay beneath the building responded to the disturbance by compressing faster. Construction had to be halted in August 2021. The same old bay clay that runs below 301 Mission Street runs below the entire SoMa corridor. The Marriott Marquis at 55 4th Street is 4 blocks away. The St. Regis at 125 3rd Street is 3 blocks away. The Four Seasons at 757 Market Street is 5 blocks away. The InterContinental at 888 Howard Street is 5 blocks away. There is no geological boundary between these buildings and the Millennium Tower. They share the same subsurface map. They sit on the same compressed, saturated bay mud that geotechnical engineer Robert Pike, a veteran with nearly 30 years in foundation design, called a complex system carrying risks that are highly likely to increase with additional stress. Quick pause. Who do you think carries more responsibility here? The developers who built on this soil, or the city regulators who kept approving it? Drop your answer in the comments, because what comes next changes that question. Let's be specific about who made decisions and when. The Millennium Tower was developed by Millennium Partners of New York. The project was designed by Handel Architects and Desimone Consulting Engineers. It was built by Webcore Builders. Construction ran from 2005 to 2009. The critical engineering decision, the one that determined the outcome, was made at the foundation level. The engineers chose 950 friction piles driven to 80 feet into the Colma Formation sand layer. Not to bedrock. Bedrock was 200 feet down. Getting to it would have cost significantly more. The city of San Francisco approved that design. The permits were signed. The inspections were passed. In 2016, 7 years after residents moved in, the San Francisco Chronicle reported that the building had sunk 16 inches and was tilting 14 inches to the northwest. Residents were never formally notified until the news leak. The lawsuit filed in San Francisco Superior Court in February 2017 on behalf of more than 200 homeowners named Millennium Partners and the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority as defendants. The suit alleged that the building was constructed on mud and sand rather than bedrock, and that developers knew about the sinking before the apartments went on sale. The suit also alleged that dewatering during construction of the adjacent Salesforce Transit Center made the sinking worse. Attorney Niall McCarthy, representing residents, stated on the record, "There's no dispute that further sinking was caused after the TJPA started their work. Here is what was known and when." San Francisco's building code has a provision that was public record before the Millennium Tower was ever built. A structure must be engineered to have a 90% chance of avoiding total collapse during a major earthquake, not to remain habitable, not to protect property, to avoid total collapse. That standard applies equally to a 5-story building and a 50-story building. Lucy Jones, former leader of natural hazards research at the US Geological Survey, stated publicly after the Millennium Tower crisis, 10% of buildings will collapse. California has strict seismic requirements for schools and hospitals, not for skyscrapers, not for luxury hotels. And now the critical fact about the hotel district. In 2018, a comprehensive analysis by researcher Dennis Karamana, a Stanford electrical engineering graduate and data scientist, found that in SoMa and the financial district, properties on high liquefaction risk soil were selling at essentially the same price per square foot as properties not on liquefaction zones. 0 to 9% premium for dramatically safer ground. Buyers and guests were not pricing in the geological risk because nobody was required to tell them. Let's talk about what this cost real people. When the Millennium Tower's tilt was revealed in August 2016, 419 luxury condominium units were affected. Before the tilt became public, 73 condos sold in the building in the years prior. After the revelation, only 13 units sold in the following months. Owners stopped selling because they knew they would lose money. By 2024, the average resale loss for units in the Millennium Tower was over 20%. A penthouse that originally sold for $13 million resold for $9 million. One unit on the 5th floor sold at a 52% loss. The $120 million retrofit, drilling 52 piles to bedrock, was completed in September 2023. As of early 2024, the tower has recovered approximately 2 inches of tilt. It was still leaning 29 inches at its northwest corner. Engineers say monitoring will continue for 8 more years. The total fixed cost, including the original legal settlements and construction, now exceeds $120 million for a building that originally cost $350 million to build. The building will be monitored until at least 2031. The soil underneath it, the same soil under the hotel district, will not change. So let's come back to where we started. Right now, San Francisco's South of Market hotel district is running at full speed. Luxury hotels, conventions, weddings, and thousands of guests paying hundreds of dollars a night. But underneath them is the same bay mud. The same Old Bay clay, the same area the USGS classifies as having very high liquefaction susceptibility. The Millennium Tower fix was completed in 2023. Engineers say the sinking has stopped, but the building has not fully straightened. It is still monitored, and its property values have not recovered. And that leaves one question the hotel industry rarely says out loud. What happens to a 40-story hotel, full of guests, built on compressed bay mud, if the big one hits? The luxury district was built on a former marsh. The marsh was filled. The hotels went up. The maps are public. The soil is still there.